everybody. Welcome one and all to the Road to the Procure Tech Cup. This is episode 11, and it's our last show before the holiday break. So thank you very much for joining us. We have a good one for you here, right? So we've got SpendHQ on the show to talk to us about how to build and think about deployment plans and deployment planning when you're rolling out spend analysis tools or spend analytics tools, procurement analytics tools. They've got a bunch of naming conventions, but they're all about looking at your spend and being able to slice and dice it so that you mine opportunity, measure your actions that you're taking against different types of spends and categories. So without further ado, we'll get into the show just after this little update here on the calendar. So as I mentioned, last show before the holiday break, we'll start back up again on January 9th with Fair Market, where we'll get into sourcing process design and how people should think about designing their sourcing processes. And then we've got a show for you every Friday up until April, end of April. So April 22nd to 24th is the inaugural virtual conference for the Procure Tech Cup Finals. So very excited about that. And you'll get all the details on that January 9th show. So stay tuned. We're really excited to hold that event live in person, in virtual person with folks for the first time here. So that being said, what's our agenda for today? We're going to really quickly give you an overview again of what is a spend analytics tool, make sure we're all speaking the same language, and then go into the main topic here. How do we build deployment plans for these tools? What does a typical implementation plan look like? Double clicking into the activities that drive outcomes. And then three main things that Brandon at SpendHQ, which I'll introduce in a second here, wants us to think about when we're preparing for one of these projects, whether it be with SpendHQ or another type of tool. And then we'll wrap it up and send you on your way. So that being said, right before we get into this, let me just bring Brendan to the stage, head of delivery for North America at SpendHQ. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Joel. Great to see you.
Yeah, and you were saying you guys are getting hit with the winter blues down in Atlanta as well?
Well, I'm certainly spoiled by having a lot of sunny, warm weather oftentimes, but right now it's gray, chilly, and holidays are coming. But looking forward to the holiday season for sure.
Yeah, it's a no-man, right? It's the last show. It had to happen before we took the break. So I appreciate you for taking the time to come on the show today. So let's dive in. Just before we get into the actual, how people should think about deploying these types of tools, let's just make sure we're all talking the same language. I mentioned up front, right? We've heard procurement analytics, spend analytics, spend analysis, et cetera, right? So to me, it's really that yellow circle, right? Well, how it's the big credit card of everything we've spent so far in the business, right, on a given period, and us analyzing it to be able to determine, okay, what should be our category structure, right? What is our spend profile? Where is the opportunity for optimizing the value of our dollar as a business? And then I've circled in blue, where I've seen certain leading providers such as you guys, and Brandon, I'd love your take on this, right? But we're starting to see spend analytics kind of drift into these categories of helping you determine what your categories are, help you determine what the opportunities, initiatives are against those categories, right? And help you track performance as you execute on your category strategy. So anyways, that's kind of how we define the category today, but I'd love your take, Brandon. Like, is that how you guys think about it, SpendHQ as well?
Very much so. I mean, SpendHQ, really across both our spend intelligence and performance management arms of the larger organization, really bring us that full overall view of not just what is occurring across your organization. So a full picture of that spend, along with that high degree of granularity and specificity, and of course, a singular source of truth from which your organization can operate from. We then go that next layer further with performance management. We're actually initiating those savings projects within the platform and ensuring that you actually have actionable data that then drives actionable outcomes. We're not just a singular element of looking at where your spend is really transpiring, but similarly, we're also acting upon those and initiating those savings projects and understanding and orchestrating across your full procurement organization what you really need to do to drive the most success and the most advantage moving forward.
And I think, you're saying that, and I was going, you're kind of describing what we had here, right? In terms of how you view it, what SpendHQ is able to do, right? And it's often, I think that first slice, 1, 2, 3 is often what we think about when we think of spend analysis and what I have in that first block. But to your point, right, you're able to go much further into opportunity management and business impact. And we didn't want to spend too much time on the vendor overview on this show, given we spent more time on it with your colleague Stefan on the first show. So if you do want to watch the first show to learn a bit more in depth what SpendHQ can and can't do, et cetera, and their ICP, their differentiators, you could scan that top QR code. And then if you'd like a demo as well, in the first season, we're really focused on demoing the products on the show. Here, we're really focusing on these different topics of how to make you successful, right? So if you want a demo, you've got that second QR code. Anything you want to add on this side, Brandon, that we didn't mention just a while
ago? Don't want to rehash too much, I know, from the first session, but of course that you really hit the nail on the head in the most crucial piece here. So with that 1, 2, and 3, the consolidation, cleansing, and really bringing that data to light to our clients, it's those next layers. So really the opportunity flagging, drilling into those, turning into projects, and of course seeing those actually drive value and validating that overall value is realized is the full SpendHQ picture that really comes together across Spend Intelligence and performance management.
And that's just as an aside, right? That's what I see as like the big value of these tools versus like just trying to do 1, 2, 3 yourself in like a self-service BI tool, very generic. That yes, you could probably get the data together, but you're going to be missing out on a lot of the value that a best of breed spend analysis provider can give you, down the chain and going to business impact and outcomes.
Exactly right.
So great, right? That's our kind of our setup here for this conversation of how do we build deployment plans for spend analytics tools. Last week we talked about sourcing, and there's like a whole bunch of dimensions that you should be considering there around categories and user groups and all this stuff. But I love the fact that we're going to contrast it with spend analytics this week, because it's totally different, right? So I'd love to throw you the ball, Brandon, and let us know, like, how should we be thinking about deploying these types of tools?
Yeah, I think when we start about talking about deployment plans, it's really helpful to see what does that road or what does that journey actually really entail from start to finish. When we begin any of our new deployments with our clients, first and foremost, we really want to make sure that we are driving towards the same destination. Are we establishing the right goals and the vision of what SpendHQ is going to bring to bear when we actually see the larger platform go live? So this is a goals expectation alignment that we're ensuring not just what we're going towards, but also we're ensuring that actions throughout that journey are going to allow for each of those boxes to be checked and then some. We don't want to find ourselves at any point where there was a gap identified because we didn't talk about it here at the very outset during the onboarding journey. After that point, as you might, of course, be very well aware, data collection is where things start and finish in a lot of cases. We want to make sure that we're collecting the most accurate data and the most granular data as well through any of our exercises. This means that we're building out the data collection requirements with our clients, understanding their overall ERP landscape, and similarly, making sure we're working with the right individuals to bring that data over to us here at SpendHQ to begin that larger stand-up of the platform process. After this, go ahead.
Sorry, like before you get into implementation, like, do you find that there's often a mismatch of like expectations or knowledge about the quality of the data sources, like where the data is coming from, and like what the realistic expectations are of putting it all together in like a first implementation?
Very, very often. This is sometimes the first instance of really truly looking to gather all spend data across many instances of acquisition over the past couple of years. The data environment may be very, very disjointed, not just across different ERP systems, but also we may see varying levels of overall data being filled out, being complete, being accurate. It's really the understanding and working with our clients that we are not just taking in those notes as we go through that collection process, but it helps inform our process later on, what we want to make sure we're drilling in towards, or this could be shining a light on where we might have thought there was a gap and we've actually solved for it. Or similarly, if the client knows that there's a gap that's going to be in a certain area, are we really talking through that in the right way to ensure we don't see ourselves in a difficult situation down the road?
Cool. And sorry, I'll let you keep going on the timeline here. Get us to finish.
No worries. Every deployment wants to get to the finish line, and that, of course, means the implementation is the meat and potatoes of this particular journey. So this is where we're going through the configuration of our platform. We're validating that the material that we've received from our clients is not just most accurate and indicative, but also meets those needs we set out earlier on in that first stage. And of course, we're working to refine the larger model that we built together. Are we classifying, are we understanding this data in the right way so that when this actually goes live to the larger user base, we have a SpendHQ that brings trust, consistency, and a singular source of truth to every individual that logs into SpendHQ for the first time or years down the road. Now, any tool is only as good, of course, as the usage of that tool. So the training and enablement is not long after this point. We want to ensure that all users feel comfortable utilizing the platform. So we're walking through how to use our system, the best practices of really what make SpendHQ across both Spend Intelligence and performance management extremely advantageous, of course, for them to initiate any of their work on the procurement side of things. And then lastly, customizing that training based on the usage case of that particular organization or even the teams underneath that we're working with. So this can include anything from actual live training sessions, demonstrations, hands-on support, literally sitting down with individuals to ensure that their use cases are being addressed as we stand up the larger platform post go live. This, of course, translates directly over into hypercare, where we partner very closely with our clients for an additional period of time post go live. And during that point, we're not just looking through those areas that might have needed additional refinement from the implementation, but crucially, we're revisiting those very same goals we had in the onboarding session to ensure that we've now checked every single box. Do we have exactly what we expected when we actually saw the larger platform become truly realized for the organization? So we're reinforcing training. We're ensuring any of those items that may have popped up, be it something as simple as a refinement of security SSO configuration, all the way to the more complex taxonomy refinements. These all take place during that hypercare session. And then, of course, afterwards, we're now moving over to the next stage of that journey together to our success team. So our client success team will then take on that relationship with our client. And the really big story here is after implementation, it's not to say that everything is said and done. We really want to make sure that we're a partner on an ongoing basis. And we have a full support team here at SpendHQ that continues that relationship on an ongoing basis. So while the implementation may be done, you've got a support team, an account management group, as well as, of course, your client success manager that are continuing to ensure that you're using the solution to the very best of its abilities and your needs are still being met that we set out back on day one.
And it seems like, these are the high level steps, but that, each project plan for each client is different, right? Is bespoke in some way, shape, or form, right? Based on how many data sources they have or, the objectives. Was that a fair thing to say?
Absolutely so. We really want to make sure that we are working with a deployment plan that makes the most sense for the organization we're working with. So from a large multinational where we're working with 12 different ERP systems of very varying degrees of overall data integrity, to an entity that may have a singular ERP system and is really starting to go into the spend analytics and the performance management world for the first time, that really brings a deployment plan that makes the most sense for that organization. We will always look to make sure that we're working with what works best for you. And we, of course, scale that based on your own organizational hierarchy and structure for every one of our deployments.
And that begs the question as well, like, because you mentioned data quality there where, and I'm thinking of hypercare, maybe like, have you seen instances where, the objectives are getting to, for example, a view of spend so that we could drive savings, for example, right? That'd be the typical one that comes to mind. But that once we turn the lights on, right, on the solution, we're in hypercare, you can now see a little bit more clearly as well, like which data source has lower data quality, and then maybe an opportunity to get higher data quality requires like an intervention, a config change in a backend system so that, you get a bump in data quality going forward for the transactions happening in those systems. Like, is that something you'd run across? Because at the same time, like SpendHQ or a spend analysis platform, like you're kind of dependent on those data sources, right, to be able to drive the outcomes. So how do you guys think about that?
Right, and we see that fairly often, and really two different outcomes are very common in these sorts of spaces. One, it may drive for truly a process-based change on how that data is being created in the first place as it begins to flow over to SpendHQ and actually change that process to bring better data into the future. Secondarily, this also can be a point where the enrichment or build out of how that data is being represented can see refinement by us to build in any business logic or elements that while your data may not represent it, we can, of course, make sure we have accommodated that through either some field scrumming, some logic build out, whatever that may be, is now being accomplished, even if your data that doesn't necessarily have those elements contained within it that you're sending to us at SpendHQ.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? And I'll let you kind of. I think you wanted to double click on some of these elements, right? That are super important. And you mentioned enrichment, which I see like middle bullet in the middle of the screen here, right? So yeah, I'd love to get more insight into what are those key success factors, key activities to get to those outcomes.
Exactly. So double clicking a little bit to what we just looked at on the prior slide, really the activities that drive each of those outcomes for those milestones are really important to get perspective on throughout an implementation, but also how SpendHQ really thinks about this when we go through our larger rollout. First and foremost, that onboarding phase contains very standard items, kicking off that larger project, establishing the governance structure across both ourselves here at SpendHQ, along with our client that we're partnering with, and then really ensuring that we have the right team in place to drive this project forward. This is also where those goals are determined, but at the end of the day, that alignment and governance is what brings us to that end of the road very successfully. We don't want to find ourselves with the wrong individual having been tapped. This is a perfect point for us to make sure we have all hands on deck that really are going to help us drive to that larger successful outcome. After that team is really together, this is where the fun part really begins. Establishing that data collection exercise, working with IT, so partnering outside of procurement to really build a bond of trust and collaboration of that data base, as well as that procurement base that brings effectively the right overall spend data to bear as it gets fed over to us here at SpendHQ. This is also where we're establishing with your team that taxonomy. Now that taxonomy is the skeletal backbone of any spend analytics. But when we think about taxonomy here at SpendHQ, we want to make sure that we're building a structure that makes sense to you. We are not an organization that has a one-size-fits-all. We certainly want to make sure that taxonomy fits your needs in tandem with our best practice and recommendation from the trillions of dollars we've analyzed over the years with our platform in the past. This is also the point where we're able to ensure that the data that we've received is accurate, is indicative, and there's no surprises. We don't want any raised eyebrows when we get to this milestone to ensure that data is going to bring us to that successful outcome once we've received all those various feeds, different ERP systems, separate ancillary areas that Spend may also live are all coming to us here on the SpendHQ side. What does this result in? Well, we have a structured, cleansed, harmonized, and I know it doesn't show it here, but a documented. So a known way in which that data is being sent over to us. So ensuring today, tomorrow, a year from now, we have that clean, accurate spend cube continuing to be built with each refresh because we have trust in how we've established those various data feeds that are fed over to us here at SpendHQ.
And while you think about this cycle, right? Like when you were talking about onboarding and data collection, I'm going, if I'm a big organization that has or your earlier example, multiple ERPs, 12 ERPs, right? How do you think about scoping out like do I do all the 12 at once? Do I want to do like a subset of them and then add deltas as I go over time? Like how do you recommend people think about that problem?
Our best case scenario, what we always would suggest is we want to receive that big bang, if you will. All data coming through on the front end is advantageous for a number of ways. It ensures we're looking at the right overall full spend profile. So we're building a taxonomy that encompasses everything. We're building a structure that represents as much of that overall data environment. But conversely, sometimes some data sources may be very difficult to get to. Maybe there's just 2 or 3 we know they're coming. We just don't have the right resources in place. They're going to be able to get that material to us at SpendHQ. That's also okay. Many of our deployments will also include a secondary phase, if you will, where we know what's coming through, maybe a second geography that we know is on the horizon, and we'll earmark that when that book is ready to be opened, that we'll be re-engaged to also bring that into the fold. But best case scenario, we have all data, but it's not to say we can't accommodate it in that phased approach as well.
I guess you get that overall picture as you mentioned, but I just wanted to call out that this could kind of be a cycle, right? If you need to add on, or you've got an M&A plan for the next 3 to 5 years, and you're going to be buying businesses, like you can't integrate them now, right? But you can always redo this cycle and kind of add delta sources over time and amalgamate them to the overall picture.
And with any of our clients that have acquisition activity or a change in the overall data environment, that's where we continue to come into play, and we're engaged whenever those do occur. So there's never a point where a new data source that didn't even exist 2 years ago does not get brought to the fold. We always want to make sure SpendHQ has your full spend picture when those major milestones do occur.
And do you, how do you guys think about like training, right? So, on last week's show is interesting because we were speaking to the fact that there's a lot of this procure tech where with generative AI and conversational based, interaction with our applications, we're driving to a place where there's less and less need for training. Is that something that you're also thinking about at SpendHQ and in the spend analysis space in general?
So we want to ensure with any of our deployments, the enablement brings all users into the fold to be comfortable and confident and actually not just looking at their spend data, but also actioning through performance management where that actual savings is going to be driven, building those projects from opportunity all the way through realization. Now, our training methodology really brings multiple elements into the fold. We are holding those training sessions that are customized based on any of our deployments, based on that own data set, to ensure that your team is walking away with knowing how to use the system and how to also utilize the system for additional resources and help. We've built into SpendHQ a resource center that effectively is an interactive user manual. So if there's ever a question with how functionalities work within our system, not just do you have that resource, you can even sign up for additional trainings or look at videos live within the training tool itself. So there's a plethora of areas we want to make sure that we've offered so that anybody, if they've just joined the organization well after our deployment took place, or of course you're here on day one at go live, everyone's able to access and feel comfortable utilizing SpendHQ into the future as well.
And I know you guys made a recent acquisition as well. Like, is that contributing to how you're thinking about it?
It does contribute. Yeah. Yes. So you may have heard that we just brought out a partnership here with Sligo AI very recently. And what that's also empowering us to do is turn SpendHQ into a collaborative tool as well. So bring that additional layer of understanding with your clean, accurate spend data. So, of course, any AI tool is only going to be accurate as the data that's being fed. Well, we've taken care of the hard part here at SpendHQ. Then overlaying that accurate overall spend cube with that prompt ability to understand what do I really want to bring attention to and react in a collaborative manner. That's a big new development here with Sligo, which is really exciting as well. So we're turning not just the data and that visualization, but also the action and the understanding all into one here at SpendHQ with the Sligo partnership.
Beautiful. And I apologize if I said acquisition and I should have said partnership, right?
A partnership, yes.
Okay, great. So I just want to call that out and apologize, but yeah. So to me, that's interesting. Is like, how can I prompt question, like the ad hoc question, right? Is always the killer, right? The executive in a meeting says, "Hey, what about this? How much are we spending in this? Or are we doing in that?" Right? And then the team scramble to try to find it. And having a tool like this reduces the friction to be able to answer that by an order of magnitude. But I find like if I'm able to conversationally ask that question and get the answer and get the data that backs it up in a very quick, one-time use format without having much training, like that's kind of that other level of being able to drive adoption for the tool, right?
Exactly right. Not only do you have the ability to dig in that data yourself, 2 clicks can answer that question that you just received of what's going on in this particular vertical, but now able to collaborate with the tool. It's really the best of both worlds.
Beautiful. And then I think you wanted to call out a couple things, right, where this is all well and good to actually implement the thing, but day 0, if you want to prep already for something like this, to have the critical success factors already lined up and ready to go. So you're in that 20% of organizations that do great with their digital transformation projects. These are the types of things that we should be thinking about, right?
That's exactly right. So really there's 3 pillars that we oftentimes see, and especially how we think about these areas at SpendHQ, crucially, when we not just look at data, the stakeholders we're interacting with, but the taxonomy, all of these will come to fruition into a successful deployment. So we really want to make sure we have a strong knowledge of the lay of the land. Where's the data live? Where do we believe the data quality gaps? And can we highlight and help understand collaboratively where those gaps may be? And what can we even do to accommodate and reconcile those? I mean, data can not necessarily be changed in that raw form, but what can SpendHQ do to modify or change on our side with any enrichments as well in tandem with that process. Now, after we go through that data readiness and that front end, it's really, of course, that partnership with the right stakeholders, engaging IT immediately. So this is not a relationship that is only in the procurement world. We're partnering with our IT partners to ensure that we have the data resources to pull the information and also be able to vet for that data for accuracy when it does get sent over to us on the SpendHQ side of things. The last piece, and this is really crucial, especially in our wheelhouse, is that taxonomy development. We have a very strong basis when we think about taxonomy in our not just years of experience and the trillions of dollars we've analyzed, but really how the best way a taxonomy can be structured for an organization. But that's only the first step. The second step, especially when we're considering this piece, is how does that taxonomy resonate with you as an organization? What is that way in which it can be reflected that your team will immediately be comfortable with? And we want to make sure we're accommodating so that when we engage the platform and we turn everything on and begin that enablement journey, everyone immediately sees an accurate overall representative spend cube that's not foreign. It's truly representative of your spend data and how you've been managing your business with that additional layer of our own best practice structure that we're layering on top.
And I love that that's kind of the last point that we finished on, right, on your portion, because like taxonomy is so underrated, right? Where people go like, just use UNSPSC or the United Nations Standard Products and Services Code. That's a neat party trick I developed a couple years ago, just being able to rattle that off. But don't use that just out of the box, right? Because it has all the holes, like a bunch of holes in it. You're not going to see your spend in a meaningful way, and in any case, like it's not necessarily mapped like how you manage spend categories, right? And so, and the other thing, like the other trap I see is like using the GL code structure, right? That you got, the GL is the different things we're spending, but it's an accounting view, right? And it's not necessarily mapped, and most likely is not mapped to how you need to see spend and procurement for it to be meaningful to you from a category management and sourcing standpoint, right? So like I've spent days and weeks in workshops with a smaller team. You don't want to have a bigger team working on the taxonomy, but thinking about how people are going to interact with it from a spend, like from a procurement standpoint, right? Like MRO hardware and bolts, right, and bearings and all that stuff, like going through that and having the appropriate level of detail without getting too granular either.
Yep.
I think is like those are the types of things to think about when building out the taxonomy, and it's harder than it looks. Like it's easy here on the slide, but like it's an exercise that you can spend quite a bit of time and effort on to get right.
And it's so much too. When we think about taxonomy, I think I said this earlier. It's a skeletal structure. It's the backbone by which we're going through in any of our deployments. We want to make sure that taxonomy truly tells us what is the good or service being purchased, not who is doing the purchasing, not going to a level of granularity that doesn't tell us if we were to go out to market, do I truly have the same home, the same goods or services in this grouping, rather than either getting death by 1,000 cuts of granularity that doesn't really tell us anything, or similarly inconsistent levels that you might have in UNSPSC codes that might not give us that same level of granularity across the full spend profile, rather only for a small GIS umbrella in that MRO world.
Yeah. So, I mean, it cannot be overstated. So I'm glad that's what you ended with. And so just as a recap here, as we end the show, right, I think, Brandon, if I try to reiterate like the 3 key points I'd leave viewers with based on your intervention is get intimate with your data, right? So where are the different sources, procure to pay systems, whether it's an ERP or a suite or something else, right? A maintenance system where people are doing purchasing out of there too, right? What are your data sources? What's the quality? And I'm sure folks like SpendHQ can help you do that data quality assessment up front, right? What are the different data formats you need to bring together and meld together, right? Like maybe you're doing purchase orders in one system, but you're doing something funky on another data object in another system, and they're both like an order type object. And so you need to meld them together from a data format standpoint. And then setting realistic expectations based on those limitations, right? So maybe you're going to have to come up with some funky rules, right, for data aggregation from different data formats into a same object in a SpendHQ. So that's the first thing. Second thing, get the taxonomy right. We said it, I think, 3 times on the show, but and the commodity code structure, you want it to be relevant to how you do business, how you how you term stuff as well, right? Like I've been in so many meetings where the structure itself doesn't change, but we argue on like, what are we going to name that level and that label, right? In facilities management, like this type of service, to get it right, so it's relevant for people when they're looking at the data. And then the third one, which you also mentioned, IT is your best friend. And this we didn't mention, but like spend analysis is often, at least from my perspective, one of the first systems you should put in place, because it turns the lights on your procurement function car, right? Like it allows you to set baselines for spend, for different levels of maturity within the business, and then intervene, right? Either go out to market with an opportunity or go make a change in the back end to the examples we were discussing earlier, and then seeing with a data refresh what the impact of that action was, right? And so they're going to be the biggest enablers of you being able to do that. And you might have to dust off that relationship, put some WD-40 to get the wheels going. And, to the earlier shows in the season, you're going to need their partnership for whatever else it is you want to do afterwards. So I thought that was important to call out. So that being said, thanks so much, folks, for tuning in all autumn with us up until this break. So if you want to keep watching the show when we come back in January, you want to get the weekly newsletter, you can scan the QR code on the left-hand side. We send the invite for the show every week. I also invite folks directly on LinkedIn. And Brandon, I know you guys prepared something on the SpendHQ site for folks who want to learn more about that taxonomy issue, right?
We sure did. The classification element, and even directly to the USPSC example we just talked about. Great link here to take a look at just how SpendHQ thinks about that classification and how we ensure the outcome, of course, is indicative as opposed to noise, if you will, in that larger process.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Brendan. I really appreciate it. I know you're probably on the verge of going on Christmas vacation there, so I put another to-do in your basket to come talk to us. But I really do appreciate it. I'm sure folks appreciate it on the show as well. So a big thank you, and to everybody watching, happy holidays, however you choose to celebrate. And really thankful to have you as a viewer of the show, and we'll see you again in the new year. So happy New Year, happy holidays, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you, Joel.